Oops, so sorry. We had a few people get a sneak peek at slide number 2. Hi there, people. Welcome. As you're waiting for us to get started, it was suggested today that maybe you'd like to share with us who you are, what program you're in, and what you're having for lunch today, because we are learning at lunch. So go ahead and put that information in the chat box while we wait to get started. We'll get started in just a minute or two.
Hi, Jill. Hi, Anthony. Hi, Gloria. Kim. Welcome, everyone.
Chat.
Welcome, Susan. Hi, Diana.
Diana's
Crystal. Hi, Patty.
Crystal. We have a little advertisement for Crystal today.
Patty says it's too early to think about lunch. It's noon.
I plan to later. So do I.
My dad always said, if it's noon, it's time to eat. It doesn't matter if you're hungry or not.
Exactly.
Yeah, some people are still thinking coffee. That was me too. I got a late start, so I'm still on the coffee mode too.
Okay, I don't see everyone. Okay, maybe not everyone. You can't see everyone. You can see Burlington CORE. You can see my slide is what you're going to be looking at, in case you're wondering where everybody went. Yes, everybody's.
Yeah, and I think everyone only Adriana, myself, and Miranda and our administrators have live videos and mics. Everybody else is muted and no cameras, so you can just post things in the chat for this webinar.
Right. So I think we're ready to go ahead and get started. I see us at about 30 plus participants, so let's go ahead and get started because it is 12:04. So good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to today's Learn at Lunch webinar. My name is Adriana Sanchez-Aldana, and I'm the Executive Director of the California Council for Adult Education. Today, our friends from Burlington English will be presenting learning solutions for our virtual classrooms using Burlington CORE. Hold on just a second. I'm trying to get to the next slide. There we go. CCAE's intent with this brief webinar series is to bring you topics of current relevance and demand that will help build meaningful connections as we all continue to work through this most interesting and challenging year. We're almost there, you guys, almost there. Webinars are complimentary to members and are sponsored by our partners in the field of adult education. Next Tuesday, November 24th, we will be hearing more about how to use technology to strengthen our state and local advocacy efforts, and we hope that you'll be able to join us next Tuesday before you get the turkey in the oven, if you're making turkey this year. The following Tuesday, December 1st, we'll be hearing how our friends at GED Testing can help us meet the challenges of continued success for our students as we continue to deal with pandemic restrictions. These are going to be our last two webinars in our Learn at Lunch series, so don't miss out. Registration is now open on the CCAE website for these webinars, as well as the Virtual State Awards event in December at ccaestate.org. I'd also like to offer a sincere thank you to Branca Marchetta, member at large on the CCAE Executive Board, and for her hard work actually to ensure that CCAE make these topics available to us all. Also, many thanks to David Palmer, CCAE office manager, for ensuring that all of the details behind the scenes work together, in particular the technology, and for holding my hand through technology. Thank you, David. Before we get started, I have a couple of announcements and logistical items to share with you. First and foremost, the question that was asked earlier before we went to recording is that yes, all lines are muted. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please go to the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. If you're using a tablet, and I haven't gotten feedback about how many people are using tablets, but the chat feature is in the upper right-hand corner. And I always like to say that because every now and then we're very, very mobile and we use our tablets rather than sitting at our computers. You'll be able to type in questions that you may have during the presentation in the chat area. One of our Burlington English colleagues will be monitoring the chat and will help our presenter address those questions at the conclusion of her presentation. We welcome your active participation, so feel free to ask questions. Yes, this webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the CCAE website after the broadcast. One last logistical item, please be sure to answer the questions in our short poll at the end of the webinar. And I'm pretty sure there is a short poll at the end of the webinar because there usually is. Thank you. So there it is, agenda. So for today's agenda, I've already provided a few announcements and updates, and we'll continue with one or two more, and then we'll move on to our presentation. As I mentioned before, there'll be time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation, so please feel free to ask. So, our announcements. We have advocacy going on. I've already mentioned that next week we'll be taking a look at how technology can strengthen our state and local advocacy efforts, and we hope that you'll be able to join us. But in the meantime, please remember that our representatives need to hear about the great work we are doing during this difficult time. So please keep the lines of communication open. Please save Friday, December 4th at 5 p.m. for a virtual CCAE State Awards recognition event to honor our 2020 awardees who were not officially recognized this year due to the cancellation of the state conference. They still deserve recognition as well as our thanks. Registration is open on the CCAE website, and we hope you'll join us. Adult Ed research. We have an adult ed study going on, and members have a great opportunity to provide input into educational research. Specifically, one of our very own members, Crystal Corbus, and I saw that she's on the website today. Crystal Corbus of Bay Section is working on her doctoral study entitled A Critical Review of Adult Education Teacher Preparation and Professional Development, Measuring Racial Identity Development and Teacher Dispositions. On the screen, you're seeing the CCAE link to a brief 15-minute survey for teachers and administrators that was developed for her study, that she developed for her study. Please help us improve adult education in California by completing this short survey. The survey is anonymous, and Crystal thanks you in advance for your support. And the link to that is ccaestate.org/research. Okay, membership. The membership form is now online on the CCAE website. We're very excited. Go to ccaestate.org and sign up or renew your membership. Another feature is that this year, as opposed to having Diamond membership be a separate membership category, Diamond membership is an add-on to any level of membership that you may be at. So if you are a member, part-time teacher, and are paying $50 to add on the Diamond membership. You add on $150, so it's a total of $200 rather than the $250 that it was last year and the year before and ever since its initiation. Diamond members are honored at the state conferences. We didn't have one this year, but are honored at the state conferences, and their member profiles are featured on the CCAE website. So it's just a little bit of extra clout for Diamond members. So so enjoy that opportunity as well. But join CCAE or rejoin CCAE, as the membership form is now available, and that Diamond status is also available for sign up. And the new membership form is so automatic. Just the amount just totals for you. It's very simple to use. So I encourage you to do that. So let's get started on today's content. Today's presenter is a familiar one to many of us in adult education. We know her as Amy G, but we're very fortunate to have Amy Giltzenleiter, Senior Customer Manager of Burlington English, presenting for us today. You may have met Amy G, as many of us know her, at your school site as she trains and works side by side with you to support Burlington English implementation. She's here today to share information about Burlington CORE and how it can help teachers engage with students as well as manage their virtual classrooms. Helping her with your questions in the chat is her colleague and our friend, Miranda Labatt. Hi, Miranda. Amy, thank you for taking time from your schedule to be with us today. I'm going to stop sharing. Sure.
Thank you so much. That was just a lovely introduction, and I so appreciate, and Miranda and I both, and actually all of our team in California, we really appreciate the opportunity to be here to present today and to share with you some of the ins and outs of Burlington. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and here we go. All right, so as many of you said, it wasn't time for lunch, but you can tell where we're thinking. I'm ready to go in and out. So we're going to talk a little bit of a deeper dive in Burlington CORE, as we know that many of you are using Burlington CORE because the last 8 months have been the last 8 months. And so whether you are working completely online, or you're working maybe a little bit on site or in a high flex module, something a little bit of both, we're going to look at some of the finer points of Burlington CORE, maybe what it looks like now in your situation and what it could look like in the future. So some things for you to take away with you today that you can maybe share with some faculty as you look at what the year has been, and then start planning for the future. So first thing, by way of reminder, that Burlington English courses, CORE included, are web-based and therefore accessible on all devices, including smartphones. So whether the students are working on laptops, Chromebooks, tablets, or phones, the content is all accessible. And that said, for instructors and teachers, we really do recommend to use the tools of a teacher. So at the minimum, when teachers are teaching, a Chromebook, a laptop, a computer. Of course, they can do it from their phone. Oops, I can't see my phone with my background. But again, think of when you're in your classroom, the tools that you have there. So as many resources as you can to deliver the content in the most effective way possible. But for students can access on absolutely anything. So even their smartphones, absolutely fine. They're going to have access to all of it. So when we think about blended learning, if you've been with Burlington for a while, you may kind of still be in that mindset of, oh, this is what we use in the lab, or this is what our advanced students use, or this is our computer supplement. But really, Burlington wasn't designed that way. It was designed for blended learning, which means that it is something that teachers teach with and that students then practice with. So And now even more so with the development of Burlington CORE, which was just years in the making to make sure that it truly meets the needs of adult education here, especially here in California. So it has a complete teacher-led instruction component, as well as complementary, you know, that kind of core resource where students do the things that the teacher has taught on their device. So we're going to look at exactly what that means. So first of all, one of the important things to remember that in Burlington CORE, every single lesson has a lesson plan, and you see it there on the screen. I'm actually going to put it right here in front of me too. I mean, even despite my background, but it's multiple pages. You can actually print these documents out. And what's wonderful about this is that not only does it provide, as the image shows there, it provides pacing options, which gives instructors ideas of, okay, how long should this take? How long should I teach with Burlington? And then how long are the complementary student lessons supposed to take? So it's not just, okay, I'm going to teach what I'm used to doing, and then students will go on the computer or they'll go on their device. No, these lesson plans have been designed so that people who've never done blended learning before, don't even really understand what that means, can read this lesson plan and get the sense of, oh, okay, I see how it's paced. I see how it's chunked out and laid out. So not only do I have the very basics of, if I've only got 40 minutes or I've only got an hour, or how do I expand the activity? How do I expand the time to go beyond perhaps just what's in the in-class lessons or just what's in the student lessons? How can I integrate writing into my activity? How can we do community projects? Those are all in the prepared lesson plans, which again are for every single lesson within Burlington CORE, which I think is just absolutely fantastic. If you haven't seen them, or if you think, I know what's there, but I haven't looked at it, or you're just going on the little thumbnails maybe that you've seen, please open them up and read them. I think they're absolutely fantastic. So let's look at actually what that means when we think about blended instruction. And in Burlington CORE, we often say green means go. So when we see this image here, as you're looking at this, we're looking at the in-class lesson. This is what teachers teach from. So whether they are doing it in a framework like this, where we are looking at a video conferencing service, the in-class lesson is what the teachers would share screen, just like we're doing right now. Or if they're back in their classroom, it's what they would project on a white wall using their projector that they left in the classroom on March 12th or 13th, or what they put on their smartboard. This is the lesson that teachers work with. And then, as you'll notice here, we've got this little plus blended with what. So here's what the teacher's teaching from, but then what's the practice that the students do? Again, think about what is, if I had my textbook, what are the activities that the students would do to then verify or validate that my instruction was effective? What's that part? Well, we're going to go to the next screen. That's the complementary student lesson. And so that's when you see it in blue, that's the part that the students do to validate or verify that all of the teacher-led instruction was working. Okay, and that way, if they don't get it, the teacher knows, oh, okay, I've got to go back to the in-class lesson or back to the content of the in-class lesson, reteach, do more of that I do, we do, you do, all of those wonderful tools and techniques that they've learned and honed over the years. So as we, and these are all, like I say, they're all, they are mirrored in terms of the navigation and the content, but not in terms of the particular activities. So it's not like, oh, I don't need to teach the in-class lesson because they're going to be doing that same thing in the student lesson. Well, they're going to be working with the same content, but they're going to be doing it in a little bit different way. So that's what I mean when I say complementary. It's not a mere image, but it's a complement. So let's go ahead and look live. Now, once again, in this image, you can see that we've got our teacher working on site, and we've got also working online. So whether students are accessing this from, a laptop, a Chromebook, a smartphone, or a tablet, it doesn't matter. But as teachers, we want to make sure that we're using the tools of the trade if at all possible. So we're going to go ahead and head to our Burlington English. And again, I'm not going to go through the login process, or, this is not a, let me tell you all the wonderful features and benefits of Burlington English. This is a little bit of a deeper dive. So I'm going to use Burlington CORE Low Intermediate as our example. And we're going to go straight into the in-class lesson. And if you're thinking, where can I find, ABG, where can I find all those lesson plans? Because you said there was one for everyone, right? One of those little wonderful multi-sheet lesson plans. You can find those in the course and lesson planner. But we're going to go straight into the in-class lessons. And we're actually going to go into Module 8, and we're going to look at reading, choosing a place to live. Now, for instructors, this is helpful to look at to just take a quick moment to look at the lesson info, because this is where you kind of get, as an instructor, you get validation that, okay, I'm doing the things that I should be doing. I'm teaching these specific CCRS standards, college and career readiness. I'm covering these English language proficiency standards. I'm covering these CASAS reading standards and covering these CASAS competencies. And for you as administrators, this kind of gives you that kind of thing that you can check off your list of, okay, yes, this has been developed. These I can check off all those boxes that my standards are being covered as my teacher is going through all of these. So I'm going to go ahead and head on into this. And as a couple of, if you've been using Burlington for a while, if you've been using Burlington CORE for a while, just want to point out a couple of new features. One is up here in the upper right, this full screen feature. Because you may think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be going back to my classroom. My smartboard is the smartboard that I left on March 13th. And I'd like to get rid of some of, my web page address and all this stuff. I just want to see my activity. We can actually click this full screen here and get just to the activity. This is all I want to work with, which is wonderful, because then it takes away the need to do the scrolling and those kinds of things. So as we look at this, as an instructor, again, what do you do when you get started? When you get started with a topic, you build background, right? You don't just say, students, what we're going to do is, yep, we're going to determine writer's purpose. We're going to identify opinions. We're going to express opinions and use nouns with the suffix tion and sion. All right, let's move on. As teachers, we wouldn't do that. We would look at these images, and now more than ever before, doesn't so much of our life depend on how we act when we see an image? So what a great opportunity to look at this image for me as a teacher and for my students and say, hey, I'm going to take a few minutes to teach my students about dissecting images and what they mean. Because notice here, we're going to be talking about determining a writer's purpose and identifying opinions. Let's look at some of these images. What do these images tell us? So I could actually spend a few minutes, because these images weren't just pulled from thin air. They're just thinking, oh, we gotta put a family here. We gotta, put a woman here. We gotta put a computer here. No, what is this saying? And especially this one with this family, notice who's doing some of the teaching here. Wouldn't you say, huh, yeah, the young one there is doing some of the, looks like doing some of the instruction to the parents. And that could spark a conversation about how important our young ones are in our families, and how maybe they do some of the translation, even things that maybe were always the parents' purview of finding housing, but now not so much. So you can see that we can use some of these images to spark larger conversations. And that's sort of the point. So we're taking everything within Burlington CORE and realizing it's all there for a reason. And of course, I can exit when I'm ready to move on. I can go up here and I can exit that full screen and get back to all of my activities. And as we move through, you'll notice I've got my getting ready. And of course, if I was looking at my lesson plan, I would see suggestions for how long do I spend in the getting ready? What kinds of other activities could I do with my getting ready activities? And if I look at my second getting ready, I could even take a look at my my prompt here, where it says, read some of the questions people think about before they move. Imagine that you are planning to move to a new city. Which questions are important for you and why? Now, if I was in my virtual classroom and I have my students, I could do this a couple of different ways. I'm thinking back to my teaching experience, and I'd say, well, I'd probably, solicit responses from my students, solicit verbal responses. But what are ways that I could use maybe my virtual classroom to help my students increase their digital literacy? I could have students raise their little blue hand if we were using, a platform like Zoom, or I could have students type their responses in the chat, or I could have students, if I wanted to encourage their use of the video camera and turning their video camera on, then I could say, okay, everyone take out a Post-it and then write your comment on the Post-it and move your Post-it close to the camera so that we can read it. There's ways to do that so that I can basically start developing two literacies at once. I can develop the English literacy and I can develop their digital literacy at the same time, just in using this. And I haven't really even talked about the content of this. I'm talking about ways to get them to interact in my virtual setting. And of course, these are ways too that we can, when we bring them back to the classroom, does that mean the devices go away? No. We can use our devices for a different ways. And of course, but still bring out the journals, bring out piece of paper. It doesn't mean students stop writing because, all of a sudden now, we're just thumbing things out on our devices. No, there are ways to do that, to keep things balanced, to keep things moving around. Now, as we get into the next activity, which is going to be vocabulary, I want everyone to take special note of this, because here's where, now we haven't gone into the student lesson yet, and sometimes teachers may think I have to teach all of the in-class lesson, all 11 activities before I have the students do that, before I have the students go into their student lesson. Go back to our textbook days, which haven't been that long ago. Go back to our textbook days and think, did you teach an entire unit in a textbook before you had the students write an activity or do an activity in a workbook, or an activity based on something that was in the textbook chapter? Probably not. So looking at this vocabulary, think about this. First of all, we have our prompt here. Look at the pictures and read the sentences. We also have these little red dots. Everywhere you see these red dots, it could be mentioning a worksheet, which, by the way, the worksheets are actually just the printed version. I'm gonna put them right here. Put them right here in front of me. Sorry, put them right here in front. The worksheets are literally just the printed version of what's in the ICL. So the worksheets don't really even become relevant until we get back in the classroom, when you've got 15 or 20 students and they all can't see what's on the board, and then you're going to need to pull out the worksheets, which are there, so you're going to be fine. But here in the vocabulary, what's important here is that this is where the teacher teaches the vocabulary, the content, the meaning behind the words, developing the construct of the words and the context. And then, so again, you could do things like, using your Post-it, using your little blue hand, having students participate in the chat, muting and unmuting, all those wonderful things to do these activities, using your full screen mode, and that kind of thing. But then you think, okay, remember, go back to I do, we do, you do. So then this might be a good opportunity to check for understanding. One way you can check for understanding is to have students do something, do a student lesson. So if you're unfamiliar with the switch, which is up here in the upper right-hand corner, this allows me to see what is the corresponding student lesson at this point. So I can click on the student lesson here, and it will take me to the corresponding or the complementary activities to the vocabulary I just taught in the in-class lesson. Now, what do the students do with that? And you'll notice in the in-class lesson where I was teaching the meaning of the word, how it means, what it means. Now here, look at what the students do. What's their complementary lesson? Their complementary activities, excuse me. First, they're going to be doing some pronunciation. So we have our they're going to listen to the words, they're going to listen, and they're going to record themselves. So here's the vocabulary that we were working on. They've actually, whereas I taught in the in-class lesson one activity related to vocabulary, the students individually are going to practice with 3 different vocabulary activities, one based on pronunciation, one that is based on a sentence completion, so meaning based, right? And another one, so close activity, and another one that's going to be again based on, you know, a closed activity, or looking at the understanding the meaning. And the other thing too that's great about this is that within, as they go through in the recording process, they're also going to get that wonderful pronunciation course that likely many of you are familiar with. And I'm just going to launch it here so you can see it very briefly. And that pronunciation course allows students to get that immediate feedback as to what they are, what the sounds they are making, the sounds they are making, and how to correct to improve their pronunciation. So they'll get a compare, they'll get a watch screen and be able to see how they're making the sound currently, and then how to make that sound correct in English. So as we look at this, we see, okay, so when I go back to my switch here, and I go back to the in-class lessons, you'll see that as a teacher, I'm going to focus on the word, introducing the vocabulary, getting the meaning, looking at, you know, building the background, understanding the student's experience, but I will pace myself and say, where is the right point to have students practice? Now, it may be as you're working through these activities, you may find that, no, I want to go a little bit further. I'm not ready for them to start their student lessons quite yet. I want to actually get more into the reading. I want to develop that, you know, I've introduced the vocabulary. Let's actually get into the meat of what's happening. And you can absolutely do that. And here is where we get into the reading. Now, again, if you've been working with Burlington for a while, I show you a new feature that was actually just released, and that is this little audio. I'm going to move it down here so you can see exactly where it is. This little audio component, where now we have, and I'm going to check to make sure that I share my screen correctly, and I select, we always tell teachers, make sure you choose the select or shared computer audio. So I'm going to make sure that I did that. Miranda, you can tell me if I didn't.
Cindy, posted September 18th, 6:49 p.m. I live in New York, but I'm thinking about moving to Minneapolis. I'm an immigrant.
So I'm going to pause that audio, and if you've been using Burlington for a while, or if not, the audio has been in Burlington CORE has been updated to include fast forward, rewind, and basically play in place. So if you wanted to move to a particular point in the audio, all you have to do, just like in YouTube, you can just click it anywhere in the play bar to start playing at that particular location. And this is helpful too, because depending on the level that you're working with of student, you may want to just go back just a little bit, or maybe just forward just a little bit to get that extra audio support as you're working through the reading. Or you may say, you know what, I don't want to do the audio at all. This is a reading component. I want my students to do that. And you can say, gosh, but you know what? I don't know, they're going to be able to see this. Well, look at what's around. Remember, always look at the screen. Look at what's available. Look at the tools that are available to you. We already know that we've got our full screen option. You say, yeah, that's not enough. That's not enough. There's also an additional option, which is a little magnifier right up here at the top, which gives us the entire screen. I can even move my little audio. Let's move that little guy out of the way. And then I've got my whole screen filled with that reading. And you can use this reading in whatever way that you would like. We have prompts, again, prompt questions to give you some idea of what do we do with this reading? And you'll notice here at the top, I'm actually going to exit my full screen, because notice I've got reading 4, 5, all the way through 9. Each of these activities is going to give me an idea of what to do with this reading. And I know that because at the upper right corner here of this page, it will tell me the focus of each particular activity. So in this one, the focus is going to be talking about internet forums. And then the questions that are under that will be focused on that idea. And again, when we look at, we've got our little red dots here, either referencing the worksheet. And again, it's here, you know, if you need it, I'll put it right in front of me. It's all printed out in a worksheet, but it's basically exactly what we've got right here in on the screen right in front of us.
And Amy?
Yeah.
We do have one question. Can you enlarge the questions as well as the reading?
Oh, excellent question. So that one, if you want to enlarge it, you absolutely can. You're just going to go up and you're going to zoom it this way through your web browser. You can also zoom it. It also responds to pinch to zoom. So if students are on, they can pinch to zoom. And we also have, oops, right over here in the far left corner, we have an accessibility bar, which will also enlarge the text as well. So multiple ways to get at that, to make that screen larger. Thanks, Miranda. So as you're going through, make sure that you're looking at the little, and notice too that these are little teacher, here's your little teacher, little pointer. These are your little teacher's notes. So this is, we would love it if you had time to sit down and lesson plan for hours and hours before you went and taught your class. But we know you don't have that time. So the points are on the screen letting you know, hey, here's the focus. So the focus is internet forums. And as you look at the prompts that we provide, you can say, okay, it's dealing with internet forums. So posting messages. And you can take a look. I'm going to shrink my screen just a wee bit there. You can post your, or you can type your text here. Now I did that. I'm the teacher. You could, if you want, say, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have my students write their answer on a Post-it. I'm going to have my students type the answer in the chat. I'm going to have my students mute and unmute and give me the response to this. I'm going to have my students, you know, however you want, or I'm going to give remote control to my students to have them type in the text box. I already know how to type. I don't need to do that. Or you could even use the tools at your disposal, which is down here in the bottom, where we even give you the suggested answers. And one of my favorite things, and probably one of yours too, if you're anything like me with your students, is finding the publisher's answer and being like, that's not the answer I would pick, and using it as one of those teachable moments. So you say, nah, no, she wasn't thinking of moving to Minneapolis, and using it as a point of discussion. And those are always wonderful resources to be able to do that. So you as instructors, you are the ones that flesh this out. This Burlington is just the tool. So you are the one, you guys are the circuit, you make it work. So as you're looking at this, if you think, I don't like these questions, I want to make my own questions, or I'm going to have my students come up with 2 new questions or a 3rd question from this. However you want to make it work, we're giving you the skeleton. It's your job to flesh it out, and we give you many tools to help you to do that. So I'm just going to quickly kind of go through a few things so you can kind of see that our job is not to surprise and shock you as we go through and kind of always be, you know, kind of throwing you for a loop. You'll notice it repeats and repeats and repeats. So you say, oh, okay, so there's a structure to it. So as you get familiar with it, you can say, how can I jazz this up? What are some ways, you know, can I add more questions as we're doing, for example, cite evidence? Here are 3 questions. Can I come up with 3 more? Can my students come up with 3 more? You know, or do I want to hide the questions completely and come up with our own as we go through this? If I know that the topic here is citing evidence, then how do I cite evidence? How are we going to work with that on this particular activity? So lots and lots of ways to make this work, using the lesson plans, looking at how at the suggestions there, and then building from it. Those are just the foundational building blocks to get you started. And there's lots of ways to do that. And of course, as you go through with, I'm just scrolling through so you can see just the amount of activities here as we go through. Again, thinking about ways to incorporate writing. Look at this. This one's asking to communicate. Persuade a classmate to move or not to move to your neighborhood, town, or city. Discuss the points below or others. And I say, well, this is a reading. Could you turn this into a writing activity? 100%. How would you do that? I know you can think of reasons. You're probably putting them in the chat. You're thinking, I got tons of ideas now. Because these are the same things as if this were in print form in your textbook, you would be doing exactly the same thing. And that's the idea. And the great part about this is that this is all brand new. It's all relevant to exactly what's going on right now. And that's a key element to why this is so crucial at this particular time. Now, a couple more things just to point out. I'm going to head back to our main menu and just point out a couple of things before we head back for the last few minutes to our PowerPoint. Is, if you'll notice, we've got these little, like, I can't think of what these little movie things are called, but it's like the action thing. These are the tutorials that help students and you as teachers and administrators understand all the wonderful new features of Burlington. So if you've been a Burlington user for a long time, you know that in the last 8 months, it is not the same program that it was. So if you're thinking, oh, okay, well, how do I find out more about this? And, you know, I don't necessarily have time for a training, or I can't, you know, I can't contact my Burlington trainer. We're just too swamped with other things. I just need 2 or 3 minutes to, you know, what are the high points? How do I record conversations? Well, we've got 1, 2, 3 minute videos on the finer points of Burlington, also with multiple voiceover languages. So these are not subtitles, but this is actually speaking in Mandarin Chinese, letting us know how to do some of these activities within Burlington.
您好，欢迎观赏。本视频将解释如何在柏林顿英语内录制绘画。
I got 你好, and that was that's as much Chinese as I know. Ni hao. So all these, I believe the first 6 are in, I believe, 18 different languages, and then the ones, and we've got more coming with the speech trainer. I think speech trainer is only in one language right now, but we've got more coming. So be sure to check back often as you look through these. So now, just to kind of head back for just a couple of minutes, we'll just finish up on the last little bit of the importance of providing flexible instructional models. And I think what I've tried to inculcate is the importance of flexibility in what you're doing, and not just saying, oh, you know, activity 1, 2, 3. Don't do that. Look at it, make it work for you. So it's never been more important to think about what works for us than it is right now. So think about what your instructional model looks like now, what it may look like in the future. But remember, you as the teacher, you are the circuit. You're what makes it happen. So for example, here's an example of, you know, a possible classroom situation where you may be on site 2 days a week and then online 2 days a week. But online doesn't necessarily mean students working independently. That could still be just in your hybrid in your video classroom, whether synchronous or asynchronous. Those are ways that you can make it work. It's still direct instruction. Or think about your students. What's their need for flexibility? Maybe they can't come to class synchronous 4 days a week. Maybe they do have to have just 2 days, and then the other 2 days or other times is independent learning. Could be asynchronous, or it could be recorded, or just time for them to work. And the great thing is Burlington collects all that data, collects all that time, so you as teachers and administrators can still count all of that. And think about too, the way that you schedule the classes. If you say our class is 6 to 9, does that mean that the whole 3 hours is in the class? Or could it be that you split it up, as you see in these images here? It could start with independent learning, and then it could end with synchronous instruction. So again, lots of ways to make it happen, and we just want to make sure that that Burlington is designed, that blended model is designed for exactly this. If you're thinking, oh, Burlington was our COVID solution, but when we get back in the classroom, it's still, that's your curriculum, and you can make it work in so many different ways. So just to end, before we go to our Q&A, we have many free live webinars, and we record them too. So if you can't make them live, you can watch them recorded. We have one coming up, which is on how to recruit students. So recruiting them on site, which many of you are doing, online, anytime or anywhere. That's in development right now, and it will be coming soon. And we're also doing wonderful spotlights on state success. I believe we have Ohio coming up next. And if you would like to see the spotlights that we've done so far, they're all recorded and housed. You just have to go to burlingtonenglish.com and find the webinar link, and you can watch them at your leisure there. And so with that, I'm going to stop my share, and we will, any questions that have come up, or just want to thank you so much for your time and for your support of CCAE, and thank you for having some lunch / coffee with us.
Yeah, and Amy G, before we go as well, we've had a couple people ask the same question. Can you please show us really quickly how to access the pronunciation course that you showed, the pronunciation coaching lesson, our speech trainer?
Absolutely. So here we go. I will do that. Toot sweet. That's the other language I know, a little bit of French. Okay. So the pronunciation course will launch for students. So it's accessible both in the student lessons and in vocabulary practice. And remember, this is for students, so you don't have to worry about teaching with it or launching it for them. It's all automatic, because it's responsive to what they are recording. So we'll just go into the student lessons where we were in the module 8 of housing and reading, choosing a place to live. So I was actually here in the vocabulary. And
ground.
And if I were a student, and as I was recording this, I would record, I'm not going to do it now, but if I was recording myself saying the word ground, I would record all of these words and phrases, and then I would get a score down here at the bottom. And if the pronunciation trainer identified an error or an area where I needed to work on, this little box up here would start to flash. Okay. And then I would know I've got a speech training. It identified an area of need for me, the student. Okay. And each student gets this individually. And so when I see that start to flash or identify that, yes,
Amy, as in ship,
then I will click on it, and it will give me my personalized pronunciation course. So each student gets this individually. So the first thing I would do is I would get the compare, and I would be able to hear the trainer.
ribbon,
And then my own recording.
Ribbon.
And I'm launching, this is a demo, okay? I'm launching this as a demo. So these are just demo students. So I would listen, and I'm then training my ear to hear, okay, I can kind of hear the difference. I can see it. It's pointing it out to me in this little triangle. I can kind of see. So I would go through these 4 to get the sense of I'm starting to hear the difference. But then I would go to this watch screen, and this is where the speech trainer is going to show me what how I'm making the sound and what I need to do to make it correctly. So I'm going to hit that play video.
You are saying E as in sheep instead of I as in ship. The corners of your lips are pulled as if you are smiling, and your tongue is too high. To say the sound I as in ship, relax your lips more and your tongue a little and say I. I. Ship. Sheep. Ship.
So this is going to work on the students, so whatever device they're working on. It's going to show up on their phone or whatever device. And what's great about this is you as instructors, you don't have to think, oh my gosh, this is going to change the way I teach pronunciation. No, it doesn't. You're still going to teach pronunciation in whatever way that you would like, because this is individual to the student. Burlington, the system listens to how they are speaking, the words and phrases that they're recording, the dialogues that they're recording, and it gives them this instant feedback so they can practice and hear themselves back and start to make those adjustments, which is great too, because now everybody's in their house and this is just extra practice that they might not otherwise get. After they do the watch, and they can watch it multiple times, they've got some listening. So they're again starting to train that ear. So they listen and drag the picture to the correct column. And they've got 10 of these. And then they've got a practice where they hear the sound,
Kiss.
and then record. And again, they've got 10 of these as well. So it's kind of like, it's building that muscle memory, giving them a chance to really work on the as they go. And then once they complete this particular pronunciation course, it kind of goes back into rotation, and then they'll hit the close button. They can go back, they can re-record this whole entire list, and the system will continue to listen for perhaps, more I is in ship or other sounds that they're struggling with. And the pronunciation course will then, continue to launch as necessary. And we really have some wonderful feedback with this for students. I'll stop my share there. And Miranda, other questions?
Yeah, the only other question was kind of related to the speech trainer. And after this webinar session, we'll be sure and follow up with everyone. So if we weren't able to kind of get to all the questions, we're happy to do that. But thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you all spending time with us. And again, if you are a longtime Burlington user, I hope this time has encouraged you to go back and look at some of the tools that are in there, because we have such a wonderful team working behind the scenes so hard to develop lesson plans and little extra tools and extension activities and expansion activities to really give you as much as you could possibly need in order to make every level from basic literacy all the way to advanced, to really give them every opportunity to practice and to give you all the teaching tools that you need to make your instruction as effective as possible.
Right. It's really interesting, Amy and Miranda. I remember that before our state conference got canceled, I know that the Burlington team was so excited because this was going to be rolled out at the CCAE state conference in April. And anybody I talked to, Suzanne or either of you two ladies or anyone else in Burlington, was so excited that they were going to roll this out, this great program at our CCAE state conference. And so interestingly enough, it was something that you guys were developing anyway. And then the pandemic hit and that opportunity got lost, but you rolled it out anyway with a great opportunity to share this wonderful resource with everyone, because, okay, oops, shift to pandemic mode and, distance teaching. And, it seems like you were building it for the pandemic, but I know you weren't.
Adriana, we felt the same way. As soon as everything shifted, I think our entire company refocused to say, okay, we would have loved to have a big announcement of this, but instead we said, let's just get it out to everybody. Let's do it right now. Who needs it? Let's push it out. If you need it, here we have it. And so I think we went from having a few schools that had been chosen to pilot with us to any school that needed to use something like this, which turned out to be all of the schools we work with and more. We decided to make that pivot the same way everybody else did. So yeah, we're not worried at all about not having a launch, because we were able to put a great curriculum in the hands of as many people as possible.
Exactly. And so we really appreciate you sharing, oh dear, excuse me, you sharing the rollout of Burlington CORE with us anyway today. Now we know really what many of the components are, even though we probably couldn't even explore them all at this point. But thank you so much for sharing and opening it up to us. And we had some really, really great questions about the curriculum. So I appreciate the participants, and I appreciate you, Miranda and Amy, for sharing this information with us. So yeah, thank you so much to everybody. We look forward to continuing to work together with Burlington English, as well as our other First Financial and GED testing service. They're wonderful, wonderful partners for us. So in closing, I'd like to remind everybody that today's webinar has been recorded, and we know that Burlington English will also be posting it on their website. It'll be on the CCAE website as well. And Amy also mentioned some other resources that you have on the Burlington website as well. And so we will share this information with everybody. And we honestly thank all of our participants for being with us today. Thank you again, Amy and Miranda, Branka, and David, and everyone involved with Learn at Lunch. And we'll see you next week. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you so much, Adriana.